Hey, and welcome to Goals, Grit, and Some Woo-Woo Shit. I'm your host, Una Duncan, and today's episode is a little bit different. I'm bringing back one of our most popular guests, and I'm asking her all of your questions about sex and relationships in midlife. Dr. Cheryl Fraser is a clinical psychologist, Fulbright Fellowship recipient, and a Buddhist sex therapist. She was my guest on episode 37, How to Get the Passion Back in Long-Term Relationships. And you guys loved her so much that you wanted to ask her your specific questions. So for today's show, I wanted to recreate one of those radio call-in sex shows that my friends and I loved in the 80s and 90s. We'd be having a sleepover and we'd hide under the covers with someone's ghetto blaster and just really hope that someone from our school would call in and ask an embarrassing question, or Dr. Ruth would say something funny like testicle. This episode is just as delightful. And yes, we do talk about testicles and vibrators and sexless marriages and how to keep it spicy, even if you're not feeling so hot about your body right now. Are you ready for this? Here's Dr. Cheryl.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and Some Woo-Woo Shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Alrighty, everyone. We are back with Dr. Cheryl Fraser. Cheryl, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I can hardly wait.
I'm just going to fire questions at you that I've received from my clients and my followers, all about sex and relationships in the prime of our lives, people who are between, 40 and 60 years old, approximately. Yep. And I got a spicy one right off the bat. Are you ready for it? Are you ready to just dive right in?
I'm so ready.
All right. Okay. So from S. Hey, Una, for the Sex Therapist podcast, I'd love to know how to break up with my vibrator now that I have a smoking hot lover. After many years alone, during my marriage, sad face, I have developed a close relationship with my vibrator. Now, in a wonderful new phase of life, I can't orgasm without it. I mean, it's okay sometimes, but my lover would really like to make me come, and I'd love to let him as well, but I'm finding it impossible since I'm so used to the high speed of my vibrator.
Fantastic question. I'm really glad because a lot of women and men or women who love them are like, quick, what's the answer? First of all, I don't have a quick, easy answer, or S would have found it on her own. But I'll just briefly, for everybody listening, S knows this already. Sex toys are fantastic augmentations to your sexual life. But one of the I'm not going to say problem, but one of the outcomes can be that when we use, for example, a vibrator for clitoral or around clitoral stimulation or whatever, any particular woman, man, trans, whatever bodied person playing with any toy, but we'll focus this on a cisgender heterosexual women's question right now. So probably clitoral vulva stimulation is, as she said, the predictability, the intensity, the ability to work with your toy so that it gives you exactly what you need consistently is a wonderful way for a lot of people to learn how to orgasm more strongly, more reliably, or for the first time in their lives. Because for everybody, let me say something that may surprise you. Up to a third of women, even now in 2024, have rarely or ever had an orgasm with themselves or with a toy or a partner. So a toy can be a great place to start. The downside is, if you think of habituation, which you know all about in your line of work there, Una, but imagine you and I buy our dream house on an island in the Pacific Northwest, and we love it. And then somebody buys the cottage next door, tears it down, and starts a major house building project. And there is noise, and there are jackhammers, and it is a freaking nightmare. For the first while, you're extremely affected by the noise. After a few weeks, it affects you a little bit less. And after a few months, you almost walk by the jackhammer and it doesn't really make a big impression on your central nervous system. That's not a bad analogy for what can happen with sexual stimulation, that we come to rely on a certain tempo, a certain pressure, a certain speed, or a certain fantasy, or a certain kick. This is where a delightful fantasy can eventually become fetishized. For example, you always think about wearing red leather and someone watching you while you're stripping or something beautiful like that, erotic like that, when you're making love to get you to orgasm. If you do that repeatedly over and over, it can become fetishized, which means it's really hard to achieve full arousal and orgasm without inserting that one fantasy in your head. So what you can do with the toy or the fantasy is get to where it narrows your sensual and sexual responsivity, which is what S is thinking of. First of all, can we just give a shout out to Sister S and her new lover
Totally.
for
So
this
great.
incredible phase of her and their new relationship. It's going to take a while to allow your body to respond more strongly to more gentle stimulation. One of the things I worry about, your generation of your kids there, Una, and older and a bit younger, is having grown up with the proliferation of access to porn online, is that they're going to become desensitized. I mean, if your early masturbation life is to hardcore porn, for me, it was to the Sears catalog underwear ads, or if you got really lucky, it was to the National Geographic with some nude indigenous people. And I'm not being facetious, right? And then if you got really lucky, you found your uncle's Playboy magazine. But when you get that intense stimulation and it pairs with orgasm, it gets conditioned with orgasm, it can be harder to get there. Yes, I'm going to give us some advice, but I needed to contextualize it in a larger way for everybody listening. You're not going to love my first bit of advice, my dear, because as you might guess, it's about, in a way, weaning yourself off your vibrator bit by bit. I don't want you to throw it in the ocean. For one thing, that's bad for the fish. But in general, I don't want you to get rid of it altogether. But it's going to take a while to allow your body and to retrain your body to respond, back to kids who masturbate to porn when they're really young, to respond to a nibble on the neck when you're making out in the back seat with your partner, to respond to the first caress on your bare breast. That's pretty subtle touch if your sexual desire and arousal have been wired to something more intense. So you might want to check out my book, Buddhist Bedroom, and or my colleague Lori Brado's book, Better Sex Through Mindfulness. They both include some sensual touch practices where you would on your own, and eventually you can incorporate your sweetheart into it, really do some gentle body exploration on your own and really use your mind to focus more intensely on how the sensation feels. And I'm going to do a little thought experiment right now. Take 15 seconds for everybody listening. Unless you're driving, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you, with your right hand, to gently stroke the palm of your left hand and focus on it. Now, I've asked thousands of couples and meditation students to do that. When I say, how did it feel? They say things like, it was actually really intense, or it felt super yummy, or wow, that was much stronger than I thought. And I say, well, what was the special sauce? Did your fingers be different? The special sauce was I simply asked you to pay mindful attention for a few seconds to the direct experience of how that touch actually felt. Taking this into the bedroom, or the couch or the kitchen table, whatever, you do you, with S and her partner, I would want her first on her own to really start exploring touch all over her body, and certainly then around vulva, anus, breasts, nipples, clitoris, and just asking the mind to simply notice with curiosity, what does this sensation feel like? So to bring the mind in alignment with what touch actually feels like. This is a little more lengthy of a process than I'm making it sound, but if she wants to, and she does want to get to where she's more easily orgasmic, more easily responsive to her partner's tongue, fingers, or him using a vibrator some of the time, which I'll circle back to, she's going to need to work with her body to be more flexible and have more of a breadth of stimulation that gets it close to orgasm. She's also going to have to work with the inevitables to so many of us, men, women, whomever body we're in, where we start to worry we won't come. And, performance anxiety and screeching to a halt and all the things. And when she's making love with her partner, and he's very much, she did say he, I think, so I'll use that pronoun. He's very much wanting to make her come, and he's probably got some skill, and it used to work with other people, or they faked it, because 42% of women do some of the time. So we could never be sure till we ask that woman. But it's going to be a journey. And I would put forward, instead of it being a frustrating, disappointing journey, I want it to become like, that old movie with Brooke Shields, the two kids on the island,
Blue Lagoon?
Thank you. So imagine you had no shame, you just grew up naked on an island. You had no idea about sex, no shame, no cultural stuff, no nothing. And you started exploring in a natural way with curiosity. What does this actually feel like? Oh, that feels nice. Let's do more of that. And it can become this slow, luxurious journey. But what's going to get in the way, as everybody listening can already guess, is wanting to get there. I want to come. I want the orgasm. Oh, he really wants to make me come. Oh, his tongue's going to fall off, and I'm not just being silly. A lot of women, if they're receiving oral sex, for example, start to worry he's not having a good time. So I want you to start fresh with yourself. No vibrator allowed in your solo explorations for the next arbitrarily 3 months.
But
no
what about
vibrator
when she's
allowed.
With him? Could she?
When she's with him, you got it, girl. When she's with him, 1 time in 3, introduce the vibrator. So you can be, making love and changing positions and snuggling and mutual masturbation and oral sex and all the things, or some of the things. And then 1 in 3, I want you to allow the vibrator to come into your couple play and allow him to use the vibrator, show him what works for you, or use it for him, and make it a sexy part of your making love. The reason I'm saying 1 in 3 is if you do it all the time at this point, you're not working on that space in between to learn to respond to touch. So the last thing I'll say, because this alone we could do 3 episodes on, is make a gentle, loving, humorous pact with your lover that orgasm is not the goal, exploration's the goal. And you could actually say to him, and we'll see if I orgasm or not, then we'll decide if you orgasm or not, which could be kind of playful and fun, that he could, I'm going to say, just for the sake of fictionalizing this couple, and it may be accurate, he can maybe come fairly easily. And so if it's about the exploration and your body isn't going to make it the whole way to climax orgasm today, then wouldn't it be gracious, fun, and interesting if he said, well, I'm not going to go all the way there either. Let's just lay here and kiss and stroke and do nipple play and nibble and explore a much broader range of what I call sensuality, which is a lot more than just sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I hope that helps to begin.
I think so. I think she's going to love that answer. The only thing is, when I was listening to it, Cheryl, I thought, and I wonder if anyone else had this thought, especially if they are in S's position, of being like, oh my gosh, who's got the time? Because I know that a lot of people in this stage of life don't have a lot of time for play. So I'll just move on to our next one. Another question here.
Yeah.
Question is, how do I go the fuck to bed and still have a sex life? Because one of the habits I tell people is go the fuck to bed. Okay. And she says, how the fuck do I go to bed and still have a sex life? My kids don't go to sleep until after I'm already in bed. So that makes adult time much more difficult. And I find myself sacrificing my early mornings for the sake of my relationship. And that's when I would want to work out. So it's sort of like there's self-care needs. And it's funny because I was talking about this with a bunch of my girlfriends. They said, oh, it's so hard when your kids are young. But actually, when they're older, they're much more omnipresent because they don't go to sleep. So,
plus, they know what's happening when the door is closed.
Exactly. Yes. So, any suggestions about that? People who've got older children who don't go to sleep.
Yeah. I'm going to be a little tough love here.
Okay,
so wait for it. A little bit of tough love, emphasis on love, but we make time for the things that are most important to us. We simply do. If it's working
that sounds familiar. Yes.
If it's work, if it's picking your kid up after their soccer game in the rain, you do the things that are most important. So we need to start with elevating the importance of our sensual and sexual life in our mind. But I also am a very practical person with a very busy life who gets tired. So I want to give a deep bow to this question being very much grounded in reality. I'm not necessarily saying stay up till 1 a.m. so you could boink. However, what can you do in your week to schedule erotic time? Do your kids go to daycare, or are they in school during the school year? Or can you get them to go to grandma's every Wednesday evening for supper and to watch a cute little show and come home an hour before bedtime? What can you and your partner schedule, plan, and make sacred on your calendar in terms of your erotic selves. And I run into a lot of resistance here, which is where the tough love comes in, which is, but I don't feel like making love. And I say, no kidding. No kidding. If I don't ever feel like going to the gym, ever once in my life, sometimes I might be curious about the workout today or what he's got planned, but I'm not like, yay, I get to go to the gym. Maybe the redhead here is like that, but she's a freak of nature. The rest of us are real people. But I schedule it and I do it because it's important to me. I know the outcome will be valuable to me. And I can hear how unromantic this sounds because I teach this all the time. The importance of scheduling sexuality and sensual time and sensual dates. And people go, it's not romantic to schedule sex. And I say, no, it's not romantic, never having sex. So we can talk in a bit about the two types of desire, which directly relate to what I'm saying, but essentially schedule and get in the shower, into bed, into whatever with your sweetheart when you don't necessarily feel like it, including both of you not feeling like it at all. I'm going to quote Rosemary Bassan. She's a researcher at the Sexual Medicine Center at University of British Columbia, one of the top researchers in the world on sexual desire. And she says the majority of long-term couples start making love from a place of sexual neutrality, which means what? We start making love when neither of us is remotely in the mood for sex. Why do we? Because if we do, we prioritize it. We know it's good for us. We know it connects us emotionally, sometimes spiritually. We know it can be a hell of a lot of fun. We know it can be a stress release. We know it can feel good. We know it helps us sleep. Multitude of reasons. So for this person who's going the fuck to bed, that's a good thing. I go to bed at like 9 p.m.
Yeah, me too.
Last night it was 8. I was tired. Then either if you cannot manage the kids situation, but maybe once a month you can get a sitter or something, maybe you can't, to carve out maybe the occasional evening before bed sexual routine. Then, and you're like, oh, and in the morning I want to work out. I'm like, have rambunctious sex. That's a workout. Goodness. That's some tough love. You can burn some calories, get some heart rate up, or you can have a sweet little quickie and then go maybe shower and whatnot, and then have your workout. So these are choices we need to make. And unless this person works out 7 days a week, which they might, but a lot of us don't, what about 4 or 5 days a week? Yeah. The off days become your, oh my days.
That's awesome. Something I've said before is that sex is like the exercise of your relationship. If you wait until you feel like doing it, there's no fucking way you're going to do it often enough.
Right. Beautiful. Love that, girlfriend. Exactly on point. Right. And we do make time for what matters the most. So if you look at your behavior, you can rate yourself and say, wow, based on my behavior, apparently nurturing my sexual life with my sweetheart or myself, if you're not in a relationship, is not very important to me based on what I'm doing. And would I like to change that mind state? Would I like to choose to make it important and do a 3-month practice session on that? I talk about this a ton with the couples that take my 3-month program. Only the last month is sexuality. I build a lot of other stuff first. And then we get to this very thing. And the lion's share of what is in my program around sex is low desire mismatch, not making love much, being lazy, finding your sex pretty boring. I call it nipple, nibble, crotch, good night. Right? I touch you here, you touch me there. We have our routine. It's good, but when's the last time we got a little frisky? So it really is choosing to make this special, sacred, rare part of our life, because in hours per week or month, it's not the proportion. Choosing to make it important again, bringing it back from the dusty cupboard we've let it slumber in and saying, even with, my goodness, young kids, self-care, a full-time career, bona fide fatigue, what would 20 or 30 minutes of connecting in this way do for us? And let's make that happen.
This podcast is sponsored by my health and fitness company, but I'm going to let someone else tell you about that.
Before I joined the MFA, I was mostly sedentary. I knew I would feel a lot better if I took control of the rest of my bad habits and ate to support being stronger. My identity changed to that of a healthy MFer, and I got my habits in line. As a result, I quickly lost 70 pounds in 7 months. It has undeniably changed my life for the better, and the magic is really in Una's no bullshit style. If there is magic, it's in taking control of your own life and being a grown-up and doing what you know you're supposed to do. And Una and the community help me do that. Give it a chance.
I love that you said how we watch ourselves and we reveal to ourselves our own priorities. Right. And then we also reveal like, oh, that's why I'm getting those results because I'm not prioritizing this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Boom.
Okay. Now I did get a lot of questions when I crowdsourced about managing a libido mismatch. Can you speak to that in general? And then I want to ask you about a specific situation that's quite extreme. So can you speak in general about managing a libido mismatch?
Yeah, it's one of the most prevalent issues that bring anybody to a sex therapist's office or to my programs, etc. And one of the ways I talk about it is I want sex and you don't. And then I teach never say I'm not in the mood ever again. I'm going to explain that in a second. But let's first of all, I'm going to use the 3 words I use the most when I talk about sex and humans, which are you are normal. You are normal if you have low or little sexual desire. You are normal if you're in a chosen partnership where there's a sexual desire mismatch. One of us wants sex more than the other. You're normal if you're in a sexless relationship. Everybody lean in here. 30 to 40% of couples in a long-term relationship, and I'm defining that as together more than a handful of years, not decades, more than a handful of years, are not making love at all.
30 to 40, did you say?
30 to 40%. I know nobody knows this. The stats out there are BS. If you Google how often do people make love, it'll say, only 11% don't. And if you read the actual research, it was 100 college students and they were fucking like bunnies. It's not representative of actual humans in longer term relationships in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So let me repeat that. 30 to 40% of you are normal if you're in a clinically defined sexless relationship, which is clinically defined in various ways, but a common one is you make love 6 or fewer times a year. So about every 2-3 months. A lot of people go, hell, I think it's been 2 months for us. People are not talking about this, Una. It's not chatted about. It's for some bizarre reason, not in articles or on social media that I'm seeing. I was interviewed last year by the New York Times and Boston Globe about 2 different topics. And in both cases, those researchers had done hella research and were completely gobsmacked when I shared that statistic. A lot of couples come to my program because they want to move from low or no sex for years toward being sensual. So now that I've hopefully relieved a bit of anxiety in our listeners on you're normal if you're struggling in this way, let's move to generally what we might do about it, and then to your more specific case. So I said I teach this idea that can raise some hackles of never say I'm not in the mood ever again. So let me explain it. I teach this to the couple, and I teach it I'll give it a quick version of it, but hopefully people can take away and start turning over in their mind and maybe exploring, which is you've now heard that it's pretty normal to not be turned on and to choose to schedule sensuality because it's important, which means, if Una and I are partners, it's like, okay, it's Tuesday at 7. We said we were going to make love. And she's like, yay, I'd rather watch Netflix, but we love each other and we've made a pact. So what do? Well, ideally you and your partner might have a shower or a bath, start soaping each other up, touching each other. You might snuggle. You might start slow. You might say, you know what? Let's just 69 this shit. And I mean, really, like get mouths on genitals and bodies generally wake up and go, oh, this is nice. And then we're making love and saying, why don't we do this more often? But the never say I'm not in the mood ever again exercise is the following. If I'm and I've got a reasonably healthy sex drive, but we get lazy, etc. But if I'm downstairs, my house is downstairs later, and sweetheart comes up to me and nibbles my neck and says, hey, do you want to? And I'm not in the mood at all. I'm thinking about finances and my next email I'm writing in my head. My natural answer for any human, gay, straight, LGBTQ plus, any of us would be, no, not right now, not into it. Like, I'm good. And then it's over. Now, what I teach people to say with a little bit tongue in cheek, when you're talking sex, everything sounds so sexual. I didn't mean it that way. Tongues and cheeks are good. Is never say I'm not in the mood ever again. It's instead of saying, no, I don't want to, I'm not in the mood, or whatever your variation of that is, you say, not right now, but ask me later. Everybody go write that down. Not right now, but ask me later. So, when I write that email that's creatively forming in my head that I've got to get on paper or on type right away, when I've kind of figured out the financial thing and paid that bill, then maybe I can go have a dog walk, have a meditate, have a shower, kind of bring my mind back to the body, back to now, and decide, I'm going to make love with my partner now, whether I yet feel physically or mentally aroused. And so that's the exercise. Never say I'm not in the mood ever again. Instead say, not right now, ask me later. That's a very different dynamic than no. No shuts the door, probably leaves somebody feeling hurt or pissed off or rejected or disappointed or sad, leaves the other person feeling pressured and kind of guilted and like they're failing their partner. It's just yuck all around. Not right now, ask me later. Then you've got to work on your own knowledge that I don't feel like it and I don't really want to, much like the gym. And say, but we do have a bit of time this evening. And how about we just get naked and start touching and see what happens?
Now,
and
what
so
if
that's part of the what I teach? Yeah, go.
What if you are the partner with the higher libido and your partner says, not right now, but ask me later? Then I suppose you just, give them a kiss and say, okay, can't wait. And then do you ask them later? Tell me about that response.
Yeah, that's why it's a 3-month program, not a 10-minute program, because exactly. And thank you for putting your finger on, see, it all sounds sexy, putting your finger on. Well, I could see that blowing up, because if I'm the higher interest partner and you've said not now, ask me later, and there's probably a history of hurt here. We all know that. There's maybe months or years of this dynamic. And I might be really defeated or really annoyed and then think, okay, fine, let's see. Let's see if you bring it up later. So I, of course, in the longer work, get people to make that pact as well that you've anticipated, which is beautiful, which is if I say not right now, ask me later, and person asks you later, then you've put yourself into a state to say yes. Or you might say, not right now, I'm going to ask you later. And then you're not worried when is partner going to bring it up. And these are the really layered nuances of human sexuality and the dance within our longer term relationships or short term, where we've got such history and baggage. And I'm generally starting with people where they've built that history, of course, as do you in your work. And we're looking to dismantle some of those patterns while having a very acute awareness that those patterns are there and that insight is not enough. I love that quote. It's actually from our buddy, Sigmund Freud. Even he said insight's not enough. So understanding why you have this issue is insight, but it's slow, repetitive reconditioning our behaviors, our choices, our what we're prioritizing that can lead to change. So knowing I need to start lifting weights again, which I know and haven't yet done, girlfriend, we need to talk. I have the insight. I believe it. I completely honor it. It is accurate for me. Has it got me into a program of lifting weights? Not yet. So it's great to know we have this dance around different mismatched desires, but can we as a loving team, and let me underline that, can we as a loving team say, hey, babe, we'd both to a different degree like a more mutually enjoyable sensual life, whether that's infrequently or frequently. We get into that in a different conversation, but can we as a team decide to make this important again and decide to make it an exploration and give yourself 6 months, a year. I work with couples who haven't made love for decades. Can I tell a quick story that warms my heart? They've done a video testimonial. These are their real names. They've said, use it everywhere. Their names are Norm and Cheryl, same name as me, a few years older than me. They came to my 12-week program 2 years ago, in their early 70s. And as they say, when they share their story, they had not made love in over 30 years. They'd stopped having sex in their 40s. They had lots of ugly, bitter arguing, multiple affairs between them, just really, really painful. And again, my program, only the last third is on sex. We're focusing on sex today, but I move through all of it. Just so people know, I don't jump into sex without a foundation in communication, conflict resolution, and the things, because it wouldn't work. But this couple in their early 70s methodically did the work. And don't you love it when people do the work we offer them? When they no, but
so nice. Yeah,
they do it. Like
yeah.
They commit to it. They create the time. If they fall behind, they catch up. They did the work step by step of this stepwise 3-part program I build for them to get to where I believe they can be. And now they make love. They schedule a sensual date every 6 days. I don't know why it's 6 days, but I know. I'm like, dude, that's more than me right now. And they're 20 years older or whatever, 10, whatever. And here's the part I love. They said, Cheryl, for 30 years, we had not seen each other naked. We would change for bed separately in our walk-in closet. Now we walk around the house and we slap each other's ass and say, nice ass. So the moral of the story is when you choose to make this important at any age, if you choose to be that brave, that vulnerable, and that curious to see if we can move our way to a new way of being together, people do. It's hard. It's like your work. It's hard. It doesn't come like falling off a turnip truck, but effort and somewhat consistent choices to work on renovating a habit pattern, a life pattern, a health, a love pattern can lead to pretty extraordinary changes. So everybody listening where what we're talking about, sexual differences in desire, no sex, etc., take heart. You're more normal than you think. And if you're willing to do some tough, beautiful, brave work, you can make changes. The same way, you tell me, Una, if someone gets the right coaching, can they lose 50 pounds?
Oh, if they do it, it's like you said. I mean,
right.
There's information, then there's execution.
Right. It might take 12 months, 24 months. But it is possible with the right sort of training around all the things you do beautifully, movement and nutrition and all the things. So saying I can't do it is a choice versus this is going to be difficult and challenging, but it's important enough to me. I'm going to commit to do some long-term modification for much better life, much more happiness.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about my specific situation person here, but before I do, can I throw out a suggestion that I heard the other day? They're like, if you are the higher libido partner, instead of approaching your partner and saying, I would love to ABC, you say, if you asked me to ABC, I would not say no.
That's great. I love that. I love that. It can run into trouble when the other partner's like, I will never ask you to do that. But it's a great reframe and working in the dance of that couple to say, can we make that okay? And can we make it fun? Right. And if what you're asking me to do is like way out of my sexual comfort zone, it'll still be no. But I love that because it's different. It's the playfulness of you ask me to please you. Instead of me going, that's right. I want to have sex. Right?
Because that's hot.
I guess there's a kink for everything, but that doesn't happen to be one of mine. Begging, not my thing.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you about the extreme situation somebody wrote in with. S, again, different S, says, I don't think I'll ever want to have sex with my husband again. I don't even know how interested I am in sex. He wants a passionate relationship. We have young kids and we get along in every other way. I told him he's free to date, but I don't want any new relationships he might have to tear our family apart. Any suggestions?
Take my freaking program because this is really complex and I would need to know way more history of why I don't think I ever want to make love ever again. You've got young kids. You're exhausted. Where are your hormones at? Where's your vulva vagina at post-childbirth? Do you have pain? Are you in the dreaded, what I call marriage incorporated? We talked about that when I was on your podcast last time, which is, you're running the business of the two of you really well. You like each other. You might even be really good friends and terrific roommates and great co-parents. But attraction is a tricky beast in long-term relationship. You know, if your hubby is a champion at changing diapers and wiping noses and putting bunny slippers on, that's amazing, but I don't want to fuck that right now. I mean, I'm being a little crass, but I'm making the point. Like, I might feel just so much love and tender affection towards him, but I'm not like, drop your pants, baby, unless that's your thing. No judgment, but first of all, this may be fixable. And I am loath to see someone say, go ahead and date, go ahead and be sexual with other people until they've really dismantled the root causes of this disconnect. And it's rare, but if after doing that, they said, you know, this really is that different for the two of us. And we think as a team, we can open things up where you have a separate sexuality life and I'm essentially celibate, but I don't know if she is. I don't know if she has her own sexual life. Does she have any sex drive? There's so many multifactorial complex factors into not feeling like I ever want to have sex again, including with myself. We want to get to the root of that. I want to. And so if they make a decision to do something fairly extreme, and that's not necessarily bad, it's based on being more clear that this actually feels like our only possibility. But I think we all know, because we all have imaginations and intelligence, even a well thought out scenario, like a couple saying you can go be safely and respectfully sexual with other people, and maybe I don't want to know about it, it tends to get very complicated because there's a third person with feelings and all sorts of stuff, and your partner might have feelings. So I know those darn things. Just so everybody knows, I am not constitutionally or as a psychologist opposed to open relationships, consensual non-monogamy, or polyamory. I've seen it crash and burn much more often than I've seen it succeed. So it's something that I like to make sure that really is the right choice, as opposed to potentially, like Norm and Cheryl after 30 years, helping someone find their way forward to being sexual together. Sometimes it's as simple as you argue and bicker a bunch and you just don't want to have sex. So I need more, but my heart goes out to both of them. And I like that they're talking about it. That's more than a lot of people would do. They're attempting to address this and see what they might do. But I'd love to get my hands metaphorically on her and say, can we really try to find out what's going on for you with lack of desire? By the way, a minority of people have little or no sexual desire ever, and that's not necessarily a bad thing or a pathology or something that needs to be fixed. But it's very rare that I've met anyone where that's their organic baseline. It's more a learned or trauma-based or just age and busyness-based. So I always want to explore that with them to help them get more clear on what they want to do or not do with a sense of I could just never have sex again.
So if someone is like, I'm just a low libido person, I'm just not interested, you would be hesitant to just let that lie. You'd say, let's explore that a little bit more.
Let's find out why. Yeah. It's not that I'm disagreeing with their experience. It is, and it's accurate, but why? Did they grow up in a, good girls don't do that. That's slutty, culture, family, religion, any other thing. Do they not enjoy sex very much because of some vaginal discomfort, or they don't orgasm well? And it's kind of like, ugh. It's like, it's okay. I do it for him or her. And I could keep going and list 30 other things, but okay, let's figure out why. Not because it means you'll want to or should change it, but it'd be like, I don't know, if I had undiagnosed back pain, it would be good to find out why. Is it just I need to stretch more? Or is it that I've got, colon cancer that we should do something with? Or is it just this is the structure of your body and scoliosis and we can't actually remediate it much? So get good massage and use heat. But not knowing why leaves us maybe missing some things that can really help support a change.
Okay. You mentioned that there might be something physiologically going on, and one person writes in, another S, says, my husband and I are noticing some sexual function changes occurring in both of us. Nothing major or medically concerning, but both kind of chalking it up to hormone shifts that naturally occur as we approach 50. I would love for somebody to get real, good, bad, and ugly about what we, both men and women, can expect to change physically and emotionally in our sex lives as we go into our 50s, 60s, and beyond.
Fantastic. So I just turned 60 this year.
Yes,
Hubby's
happy
turning
birthday.
59. Thank you. And again, maybe to reassure and also unfortunately not reassure people, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. I was an easily sexual, easily orgasmic girl. My first vibrator was my Snoopy electric toothbrush. True story. And I masturbated reasonably early. I don't have a sense of when, maybe 12 or something, which was early for my generation, and had lovely clitoral orgasms. When I eventually chose to lose my virginity, with someone I loved when I was 16 and he was 21. He had some experience. We fooled around for months before I felt ready for intercourse, but he used to go down on me and give me oral sex orgasms for like months before I was ready to choose to have intercourse. Unbelievably beautiful losing virginity story, Una. And I've asked hundreds and hundreds of men and women their losing their virginity stories, and I haven't really heard one as pleasant as mine. It's really rare. Fast forward, I had a high, healthy, natural sex drive my whole adult life, generally a little bit higher than my partner's, and just a delightful part of being alive. Like most women, the Canadian average for menopause is 52, defined as 12 consecutive months without a period. Right around 52 in a minute, I was in menopause, and there was a fairly dramatic change in my sexual responsivity. My desire was way less and infrequent. I used to have lots, I just kind of be happily horny and say, hey, you want to make love? And that was a gift and a beautiful part that I felt very blessed by. It became more difficult to reach orgasm some of the time. And ever since Snoopy, clitoral orgasm had been quite easy for me with not a ton of extra stimulation, mouth or fingers or all the good things. And my orgasms, to my dismay, the intensity changed from, say, a 9 or a 10 out of 10 to like a 3. More like oh, that was nice.
Oh, like a sneeze.
And yeah. And I'm like, holy smokes, I know this happens to a lot of people, but I honestly didn't expect it to happen to me. Not because of my field, but because that had come so easily to this body and heart through the first 6 years of my life, or 50. So none of what I'm saying will apply to every man or woman or LGBTQ or trans person, but certainly a lot of women, even those with quite easy, lovely sexualities, find some real changes through premenopause and into and postmenopause, physically and in the desire realm. I used to be, quite interested in making love 2, 3, 4 times a week. And then I was like, I could go a month or two. And I'm like, what has happened? So that's keeping it real. It will change for a lot of us. Men have a similar trajectory, which is talked about even less because the cultural ridiculous myth is men are pigs. They want to have sex all the time. They'll fuck anything. I hate that so much. It's so incorrect. It's so anti-men, and it's also anti-women because the, cultural narrative myth about us is we're not really into sex. We kind of just do it for him. They're both so old school and crazy, but they still float around in people's ideologies. So when I work with heterosexual men, gay men as well, but heterosexual men, this applies to because it's about a man and a woman. If a woman loses her desire, he usually doesn't blame himself. He thinks, well, women aren't that into it anyway. So if she doesn't want to make love, it's not about me. When a man loses his desire in a heterosexual relationship, his woman often feels like it's about me. Like if he doesn't want me, it's about me. So when a man is going through his own andropause or changes in his own body, hormones, testosterone, etc., and he's just not that into it that as much anymore, often it leads to a hurt and confused female partner, unless she's like, perfect, because I don't want to have sex anyway. Then we're in that kind of, we just kind of won't bother realm. And then there's some of the physiological changes, certainly for most women through peri and premenopause. And of course, this can also be pregnancy, childbirth, post-childbirth, other times in our hormonal cycles, et cetera. But we'll focus a little bit more in the 50s and beyond, as per the question, is vaginal dryness, changes in lubrication. The thinning of the vaginal wall happens after menopause, and that can just lead to a little more sense of rawness. It doesn't feel that good being penetrated, and then you flinch, and then your warm-hearted male lover's like, oh God, I don't want to hurt you. And he starts worrying about that, which can affect his erection or his tendency to want to have intercourse, because making love with the person you love and they're flinching is no fun for him. So there are a lot of changes. Some of you won't have these, or they'll be pretty minimal. Enjoy the hell out of that. But what's so important, and blessings on this question, is when we can get real, as she's asked, like what can we kind of expect is, and now what do we want to do about this? Not unlike changes in our body in terms of strength, flexibility, stamina as we age. What do we want to do about that? Be on the long, slow slide to using a walker? Or do we want to be, doing yoga and joining Una's program and lifting the weights I should be lifting and working to be more flexible, have more bone density, strength, and all these things? So in terms of your sexual life, some what I get into in the program, and I've got a couple of great guest experts that do classes as well, is how to it's like rethink your sexual journey in an encounter. We're going to make love, and the old journey maybe was a variation of, we kind of know what to do. It feels pretty good. We generally both orgasm, or if not, we know what to do to help the second partner have sexual pleasure, orgasm or not. And it works pretty well. And now things are changing. Maybe you're ready and you feel wet and you feel good, and now my penis won't work, partly because you flinched last time, and now I feel embarrassed and I'm in that cycle. Or, of course, I didn't even talk about the male orgasm also reducing in its intensity for some men as they age a lot, where again, it's sort of a 3 out of 10, like a sneeze, and oh, that was kind of nice, instead of wow, that was really great. And what we do as humans, I think, and I have to watch out for this myself in my sensual life with my hubby, is it's hard not to grieve what it used to be like. And I'm not saying that's bad. And I think we should give some time to, I regret and I'm disappointed and I'm not happy that after menopause, this beautiful sensual reactivity changed so much. But what do I do with it now? Who do we become? And so one of the models I love, it's Dr. Barry McCarthy. He does a guest expert call in my program. He's in his early mid-70s. I call him the godfather of sex therapy. He's co-written or written 26 books. He's a delight. Actually trained with, masters of masters and Johnson back in the day. And he talks about having the best sex he's ever had with his wife now in his 70s. And he's got a model I love called the good enough sex model. And you're like, it's good enough, good enough? Well, the way he describes it is. He talks about, and I approach it in a similar, slightly different way, and they gel really nicely, is in this sensual encounter, let's remove the goals and let's have a good enough, curious exploration, a winding road of what does this feel like and what feels good. And maybe an erection's not going to be firm enough for penetration tonight, and that's can be okay. By the way, a lot of guys don't even know, and their women or guys don't even know, a man can ejaculate and have orgasmic pleasure with a soft penis through masturbation or you giving him oral sex or your own hand or whatever. It's not firm enough to penetrate and lead to vaginal intercourse, for example, or anal intercourse, etc. But there can still be pleasure. And we don't even know that, a lot of us. So we go, oh, darn, the equipment's not really participating. That's okay, babe. No big deal. And we stop. Instead of exploring or even putting some lube on your hand and playing with his penis and just him having some pleasure, whether or not it goes toward full orgasm, it's like, that feels really nice. So that's some of what a lot of us can be open to learning about our bodies. And then there's the whole head trip thing. I'm old and fat and wrinkly. God, how I hate those thoughts when people actually indulge them, but a lot of us do in our own version. I'm scrawny and whatever it is. We have to watch out for the regret that it doesn't take over and we live there. And then we start avoiding the new phase of our sexual journey and dance and exploration because it's not like it used to be. So I want us to hold some sadness and some regret that it was easier and everything worked better. And that was nice. And I loved it. And here we are now. And it's often not that way. Occasionally it will be, and then enjoy the hell out of it. And then other times, too many couples stop trying because it's not working the way it used to. And then we end up in low sex or sexless marriages or relationships or commitments or non-commitments, instead of saying, how can we together be really hot in our 60s and 70s and 80s? Because we can. It's going to be a different type of hot, but it can be spiritually profound. It can be just so sweet. I mean, I can't wait. Well, I will wait a couple decades till I'm like 95. And my goal, universe, is to die in my partner's arms while we're making love, like when we're 100 at the point of mutual orgasm. I think that'd be an epic way to go.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
We might need a lot of props, but.
So Cheryl, I mean, we spoke earlier, we both agreed that people come to us feeling like what they want is impossible. And you and I both agreed, no, if you put the work in and you do it, it is possible. But what I'm hearing now, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is you're saying it might not be possible to get back to the way it was. But what will be possible is for you to create a whole new hot situation the way it is now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, redefining it. And by the way, sometimes if you work on your head and you work on low desire and being irritable and all the things I teach as well, and why I'm so mad that I do all the childcare and you don't, when we clean some of that up, some of the desire does return and some of the relaxation does return. And you can have times where it's pretty hot and great like it used to be. But like in your field, I'm 60 now. I shed 22 pounds this year. I feel good. I think I look pretty damn good. But my ass is not my 20-year-old ass. It's just not. I look at pictures of myself back. I'm like, oh my God, girl. And you thought your thighs were fat. You look freaking amazing, right? So if I'm like, but it doesn't look like when I was 20, I'm going to be pretty unhappy instead of looking at myself now nude and going, man, I look good. And I'm proud of the hard work I did around food and nutrition and choices and moving my body that led me to move forward to saying, I really like the body I'm in and I'm really glad with it. And if I compare it to my 20-year-old body, it's not going to measure up, but it's freaking amazing now. And I tell you what, I'd go back to being 20 for that ass, but I'd never want to go back to that mind. I will not trade the wisdom and everything I've learned to go back to that angst-ridden, confused about what was really important, lovely, beautiful girl. I'm like, have your ass. I'll keep the mind and deal with her ass. Thanks. I'm good.
I love that quote. And Cheryl, you're getting into, I mean, that is what I've had the most questions about. So one person summarized it saying, I would love to hear how to feel like a great lover and take myself seriously in the bedroom when I'm just not feeling myself physically. I think my husband and I both get these knocks of, oh God, we're not the same hot young things we were when we got married. So she asks, how do we seduce one another and take each other seriously as hot, which of course we are, but it's different, right? Right. I think there's a relationship between fitness and body image work and the bedroom, and I just want to hear more. And I'll just say then what two other people said, how do I hide my post-pregnancy belly during sex and still feel sexy? It looks like a deflated balloon. I can't be on top without thinking about it constantly. And then someone else said, give me some advice about feeling sexy and desirable even when you have a mom gut. So it's so common. I had so many questions about exactly this.
Yeah. And just such beautiful, beautiful questions. So I'm going to answer this on a couple levels. I'm going to start with the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to look at your gorgeous freaking body and your mom gut and your cellulite and your saggy ass boobs and everything else and his ball sack that goes down to his knees. It's coming, guys. It's coming. And go, thank everything in the universe that we are healthy. Thank everything that we have these precious human bodies in their shapes and their sizes with their warts and their weird freaking chin hairs. Oh, wait for that, Una. Yeah. 60 years old. Suddenly I got like a chin hair. I'm like, you little bitch, what's going on? And say, we have bodies that function. We have bodies that we can drive and walk, hopefully. And those that can't walk, work within that with your beautiful sexuality. But that's the big goal. I have a friend, her name, we'll call her N, and she was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer about 20 years ago. And she sent me a text and she said, they said they could do a lumpectomy or a mastectomy. I'm like, cut my fucking tit off. She says, you feel very different about your body. And of course, that's not true for every woman on that journey. And I don't mean to imply that, but she's like I care about my breast. I want my life. And she was able, thankfully, through great treatment and whatnot, she is still with us now. And I share that graphic example to when we're worrying about our beautiful mom guts, when we're worrying about all those things, which we do. I'm not blaming or shaming anyone. Remember, I said I was going to answer on several levels. This is the big picture level. If you could say, thank everything that's holy for this gorgeous mom gut flapping around, because it birthed your babies, but also that it's not filled with colon cancer, that I don't have ovarian cancer. And I know these are tough things to hear, but ultimately, love the hell out of this body that's still functioning. And if we're not yet, and maybe we won't be in a scary disease process, a scary chronic pain situation, love what you've got. So there's the big picture. Now let's talk about, and yet, insight's not enough. There are some really sweet, fun ways you could try to work. So if that was the top level, I'm going to now come to the bottom level, which is a great level. And then I might talk mid-level. Bottom level, if I had a tummy I did not care for, and if I'm on top of my partner and I'm just focused on and feeling, embarrassed and worried about how my tummy might look to my partner, the first thing that came to mind is get yourself some sort of lingerie situation that covers or even girdles your tummy in a way that you feel more sexy. You feel you're not worried about movement in the mummy belly. And it could be a crotchless situation, so it's actually quite sexy. You feel pretty in it, and it covers up the parts that currently your mind may focus on. Not unlike weaning off 100% reliance on a vibrator, I want persons to work with their mind, to redirect their mind away from, oh, my yucky mummy belly or whatever. But that can be a way to start from the bottom up and say, I actually feel kind of sexy in this. I actually feel a little bit hot, and my belly is either covered by soft chiffon or something, or maybe tightly, beautifully sort of half corseted in a way that I think I look hot and I don't worry about it right now. That would be a great way to start from the bottom up. And then you could avoid being on top for a short period of time, but I don't want us to take away positions because we're worried about our body. And also, it's such a simple one. But make love in the dark or by candlelight can really help for a while when we're not maybe wanting to be looked at. And I'll share a sweet thing I heard from a heterosexual couple that this may help. It may not, but I was working with a similar sort of issue years ago when I used to see couples privately and heterosexual. And she said, I feel worried about my body and I'm worried that, this and that. And he looked at her and he says, honey, you know what I think? I said, and I think all guys think this, which may not be right. He's like, it's a girl and she's naked. And I get to touch her. I mean, it was so funny and cute, but he was making a deeper point, which is, babe, you're worrying about your curves or your whatevers. And I'm like, God, you look gorgeous. And I get to touch this. I get to lick this. I get to nibble this. So often, not always, your lover, male or not, may be so unperturbed by what's bothering you. And if they are perturbed by that, I have to work on that side of the situation as well, right? Partner gains weight, partner this. I work with, and again, LGBTQ, gay or straight, doesn't matter, saying, I feel like I don't feel great about admitting this, but I don't feel visually attracted to my partner the way they are right now. Then I need to work on that side too. So really something as simple as wear something that you feel more confident in that can disguise the bits you're currently not feeling too in love with. Candlelight, just don't knock them over. Artificial candles maybe. Showering together, but with the lights off and a candle in the bedroom and then I want you to move into the middle ground, because the top ground is get to where you just love this body as it is. The bottom is, but I don't right now and I'm struggling. Can you help? I've given a couple practical ideas. The middle ground would be moving between 1 and 3 with things like, you could ask your sweetheart to massage your belly, to stroke your belly in the dark by candlelight, if you like, and try to work with any anxiety or discomfort or feeling too vulnerable that comes up and say, can you find pleasure? You can do this on your own. Can you find pleasure stroking your belly? Maybe not at first because there's this big mean story about the belly. But if you actually close your eyes and trail your fingers across your belly, anywhere that the nerves are still intact, which should be most of it, maybe with a C-section, there might be certain areas where you don't feel much, and just feel that actually feels nice. It's my story about how my belly used to be or should be that's in the way. I can still feel pleasure. across that belly. It's not my enemy. Can I treat it more kindly? And we'd work for a while in that in-between place as well.
Oh, that is such a beautiful answer to that question. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You know, Cheryl, we're out of time, and I feel, and honestly, I didn't even get to all the amazing questions that were asked. So I feel like I'm going to have you on for a third time if you're okay with that.
Hey, who doesn't love a threesome?
Awesome. Awesome. And in the meantime, I know everyone's going to want to hear more of your wisdom. So tell them how they can get more Dr. Cheryl in their lives.
Love it. Well, goodness me. Right in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be teaching my free workshop, and I'll teach it 3 or 4 times. It's live each time. And it is a deep dive into the 3-sided model I teach, of which sexuality is the 3rd side. I would love people to come to that free masterclass. Your relationship's worth 90 minutes of your time. And at the end, I stick around and I do an extensive Q&A, and you're not on camera. I'm the only one on camera. So you can type me your questions and I can go more deeply into your questions. I'd love to meet more of your audience there. And for those of you interested, around the middle of October this year, 2024, I'm starting for the only time this year, and then not for 12 months, my 3-month journey, where I take couples on a really immersive 3-month journey. I teach every week or every other week live, answer questions, do coaching, and there's an entire curriculum on the 3 keys to great relationship, or the 3 sides to passion, of which sensuality is the 3rd one, which we focused on today.
And people who sign up for that program, like, they actually get to coach with you?
I know, it's crazy. Nobody else is doing it, and I don't know why. But I do it that way very specifically because that yields results. It really helps people. So they get the whole curriculum, they watch on their own, they do the exercises with their partner, deep dive. There's some master classes with world experts, like people who've been on Oprah and whatnot. But every couple of weeks, they get 2 hours or more with me, where I do some deeper coaching on certain topics relevant to the current group, and they can ask me their questions. And for general ongoing advice, people can visit my website, sign up for my weekly Love Bites. It's a video or a podcast episode that comes out every Tuesday, or YouTube, or many of those places. And if you want to rate yourself right now on how you're doing on these 3 keys to passion, I have a quiz we can link to as well. And it takes about 10 minutes, and you can see where are we strong and where are we weak on the 3 keys, sensuality being only one of them.
Another just quick question about your program, because I suspect this would be everyone's first question. What if I want to do it, but I can't get my partner to do it?
Welcome to the club. That's about 30 or 40% of the people, of course, right? Absolutely. And it's in a hetero relationship, it's not always the woman. I get a lot of men who want to do the program and their wives are reluctant, or partners, etc. I work with that in the masterclass because I get asked that question a lot. And what I say, again, it's a little bit of tough love, is you only ever have 3 options in your relationship. You stay the way it is, you leave, or you stay and you change it. And because we're not masochists, if we stay and change it, we want to change it for the better. And I speak to reluctant partners on the masterclass because their reluctances are usually grounded in a lot of reality. It's very rare that I have a reluctant partner who doesn't care about the relationship or doesn't care about their spouse. They're like, we've tried a bunch of things and they didn't work. I have people who say we've gone to 3 different couples therapists and it didn't really help till this program. Or they're actually more content and are more happy with the way things are. And they feel their partner's kind of always looking, striving, wanting more. And it's out of their depth and they're afraid it's going to be a, overhaul me as a crap partner kind of situation. Or they have tried before and been shot down, because that dynamic happens a lot. Let's say I want you to be more romantic, and I ask, and then I eventually complain, and I eventually feel disappointed, and eventually I criticize you a lot. And then you say, okay, I'm going to try to make Cheryl happy by being more romantic. We talked about this actually in the last podcast, so people can go listen if they like. And then you tentatively try. You try, like you Shakespeare would say, screw your courage to the sticking post. And you say, okay, I've planned a romantic date, and we're going to go eat sushi, and then we're going to go for a walk by the ocean. And the person who's been asking for romance says, well, I don't feel like doing that. Boom. I see that so much. So reluctant partners, I meet them where they're at because they usually have really good reasons for being reluctant. So get them to come to the masterclass. And if they can't make it live, I'll send you a replay. But I love it when both people come to the masterclass. And the other thing I find, I take this as a great compliment. A lot of straight men resonate well with how I teach. They don't feel like, turn into a hairy woman, which will never work. Like, be all emotional, write poetry. And we don't want hairy women as partners. Actually, we want a man who can also, be feminine, and we want to be feminine and masculine. That's a whole nother thing. But it's a great question. And I do have a pretty good success of having reluctant partners say, well, I'm willing to give this a try. And then they don't feel criticized or marginalized. And I address it a lot. And I saw a lot of men in my private practice for years, a lot of RCMP officers, a lot of soldiers, a lot of real guys. And I think that's because I'm quite a straight shooter like you are. And they don't feel like I'm asking them to change. And they don't feel like they're the guilty party in any, relationship that someone wants more from.
So see if you can get reluctant partners to the webinar. If not, there will be a replay that you can send to them, and that's a little less pressure. Awesome. Cheryl, thank you so much for spending so much time with me today. I've loved having you as always, and you were such a wealth of information.
Oh, what a delight. And thanks to all your incredible audience. They're so engaged with your work for good reason. You're a wonderful coach and leader, and that they're just happy to put out these really intimate questions, because every question we answer today, there are so many others listening. They're so glad they asked it. So I really admire that. Love your audience.
Yeah, me too. All right. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Bye.
Bye.
Well, my friend, that was a good and long one. Oh, she's right. Everything does sound sexual when you talk about this stuff. So listen, I won't yammer on too much with my takeaways, but instead, I would love to know if you like that crowdsourced Q&A format. And if I have Dr. Cheryl back, what would you want to know? As always, hit me up on Instagram. But more importantly, dude, if you know someone who could relate to any of the questions that we talked about today, make sure you send them a link to this episode so that everyone can know that they are normal, and that if they aren't happy with something in their relationship or their sex life, they can work towards fixing it. So let's share that growth mindset in all areas of life. Until next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.